him about his military experience. So, what made you want to go into the military?
I don't know. It's always something I thought about doing. And then the time frame I joined was when Afghanistan was going on, and then the Iraq War started. So it was more of a feeling of a call to duty. So I was in college at the time at LSU. Thought I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but then these things happened, and I don't know. I felt like I wanted to be a part of doing something about it, so I enlisted in the Army.
Okay, what made you choose the Army over the other fields?
I kind of did some research online, and I don't know. I always liked the Army growing up as a kid, and after talking to the recruiters, it just seemed like it'd be a good fit. So I just signed up with the Army.
Okay. What was Ranger training like? Was it physically, mentally hard, both?
Yeah, Ranger school was very tough. I think at the point when I went into Ranger school, I was maybe 3 years in the Army. I'd already done one deployment to Afghanistan and came back. But in the Army, I was in infantry, so it's looked on favorably if you have your Ranger tab. And Ranger school it's pretty much a leadership school. And I was a team leader at the time, so I wanted to be a good team leader for my guys. So I figured Ranger school would help me do that. But yeah, it was very tough. So Ranger school has 3 phases. It has the binning phase, it has the mountain phase, and then it has the phase in Florida, which is the swamp phase. And then it can last as short as I think 61 or 62 days if you go straight through. But it could take months to complete if you get recycled in a certain phase. But luckily I made it straight through, so it was 61 or 62 days for me. But yeah, it's a very challenging school mentally and physically, but it's very good training, and it's worth the hardship.
Okay. How important was teamwork and the trust among the soldiers that you were with?
I would say it's very important. You have to rely on these guys that you're side by side with day in and day out. And like I said, I was in the infantry, so it was very important to be able to trust the guys on your left and right, because just the nature of that job, your life's on the line every time you go out and do a mission. So you have to have trust in your soldiers and trust in your training. It's a big part of it.
Okay, what was something challenging that you faced when you served?
I think for me, probably the most challenging part was just being away from family. Because like I said, I joined when it was wartime. I got deployed to Afghanistan twice. The first time it was 9 months, and the second time it was 16 months. So you're just away from your family, you're away from your wife, you're away from your kids, and that's a very long time to be away. Not only on yourself, but it's hard on the people back home because they don't really know what's going on. And like I said, if you leave your wife and kids and she's doing all of this stuff at home by herself, and then back when I was deployed, I guess where we were in the situation, we just didn't have access to phones a whole lot. We didn't have access to emails, so I could go a week or longer without talking to somebody. So it's very challenging, and I think that was the hardest part when I was enlisted.
Okay. How did you deal with stress or fear in dangerous situations that you would encounter?
I don't know. I think it's just something you have to deal with, and in those positions, that's what you train for. When you're not deployed in a combat zone, you're training as if you are deployed to a combat zone. So that's all you do, especially when you're full-time Army. You're training for those situations. So I think training kicks in, but it's just part of it. That's part of having trust in your leaders and in the guys around you, because things are going to happen where you're going to get stressed, you're going to be afraid, but you just have to rely on the people around you, and you have to do what you have to do in order to, make it home at the end of the day.
Okay, and I know you have a Purple Heart. So can you explain like what the Purple Heart represents?
So the Purple Heart is a medal given to anyone who receives any kind of wounds in a combat situation. So mine was the first deployment to Afghanistan. I think we had only been in country a few months, and I was very new. So I joined the Army. I signed up in December of 2002, went to basic training in March of 2003. Basic training and AIT training. I can't remember exactly, but I finished either like the end of June, beginning of July. And then I had to report to Fort Drum, New York, my first duty station, in the beginning of August. So I got to Fort Drum, fresh out of basic and training. And as soon as I got to the unit, they were like, hey, we are deploying to Afghanistan in 2 weeks. So it wasn't a whole lot of time for me to prepare and, learn what I needed to learn. So it was a whirlwind. So got to the unit, find myself in Afghanistan, on the ground just a few months. Like I said, still learning everything, brand new private in the Army. And we were at a forward operating base in a small village in Afghanistan. We were actually attached to some special forces guys, just our platoon was. And we were going to a resupply to a base in Afghanistan. It was like a 3 Humvee convoy. And we were just on our way. We were the trail Humvee, so the last one going. And then all of a sudden we just rolled over an IED. The first 2 Humvees missed it somehow, but we hit it. It completely picked our Humvee up. And then we kind of nosedive, and it, the Humvee was completely demolished. We couldn't use it. There were 4 guys in the Humvee with me. I was behind the driver's seat. There was a guy driving, a guy in the passenger seat, and then a guy in the turret manning the gun. The guy in the turret was thrown from the Humvee. The guy in the passenger seat, I believe he was not completely unconscious. So the driver and myself were the ones that were still conscious. Looking back on it, because it was all a whirlwind, and I remember like the sound, the explosion, and that's kind of it. I think, knowing more what I know now, I probably had a concussion at the time, because I remember like being dazed and not really even know what was going on. But I didn't suffer significant injuries, thankfully. I had some cuts on my face and on my head. Didn't have any internal injuries. But no, we were lucky. We were all lucky to be alive. We were lucky there was no follow-on attack, because we were kind of isolated by ourselves. It was a few minutes before the other 2 Humvees had realized what had happened. Then they turned back around to come help us. Then we called in, medevac helicopters to get the guys that were more seriously wounded out. But no, that's just what kind of happened. Like I said, I'm very lucky that that's all I sustained. But I didn't even think, that deserved a Purple Heart. Usually you think more serious injuries, but my platoon sergeant, he was like, no, you were injured. This is a combat situation, so you deserve that. So he's actually the one that, kind of wrote it all up for me, which I'm grateful he did. But no, that's kind of how that happened.
Okay, how did being in the military change you as a person?
I think being in the military, it just instills discipline for one. You just learn how to work as a group. As a platoon, you're pretty close, and it's a lot of different personalities. It's a lot of different people from different backgrounds. So you have to learn to work together. With all these different guys, you're not going to get along with everybody, but you just have to learn to make it work. And I think that's something that you can take away and put into every other avenue of life. You also, I think it instills hard work, instills confidence in yourself, because you do a lot of hard training. You push yourself to the point to where you almost feel like you can't go anymore, and you have to keep going. it's just a lot of life lessons that are very worthwhile, and it's probably the only place you can find those.
Okay, my last question. What's some advice you would give a young person that wants to join the military?
I mean, the military, I think it's a great thing to do. For one, you're serving your country, but it has a lot of benefits with it. You'll learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about what you can actually do and push through. You learn a lot of leadership skills. And nowadays, there's, you get college benefits, you can get bonuses sometimes. It's a lot of good training. Like I said, I did 8 years active duty. I initially signed up for 5, and then I ended up re-enlisting one time for 3 years. But it was good. I'm glad I did it. Even though I was away from family for a while during those deployments, I learned a lot about myself. It helped me pay for college when I got out. So it was very worthwhile to me. Any advice I would have for someone looking to join the military, just do your research on the different branches and to see what all they have to offer, because they're all unique and they all have their own special things they can do. So yeah, just definitely do your research, talk to the recruiters, talk to veterans who have served, and just make the best decision.
Okay, that'll conclude our interview. Thank you for having the interview with me.
You're welcome.